Hi everybody, I'm Joe Harford.
And I'm Angie Keating. Why do you always get to do the intro?
Because you're typically slower than I am. And
Okay.
I mean, we could, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, really, please.
Well, today we're going to talk about cyber liability coverage.
But see, now, you wanted to do this, and people have absolutely no idea even what they're looking at right now. What is this show?
Oh, it's data security over coffee.
Well, first of all, that says Allegheny Shredders. It doesn't say data security over coffee. You'll have to forgive her, because often in the mornings before coffee, she's a little slower than the average person. So anyway, let's move on.
Yes. Well, we do love Allegheny Shredders.
I love Evelyn Jefferson.
Yes, they're our first sponsor.
They are.
And we had such an overwhelming response of people wanting to be sponsors. We're still trying to sort them out after the conference that we were at. So anyway, one of the things that I thought was really important for us to talk about in all seriousness, because this is a really serious topic, and it's something that continues to evolve and change, and I have a real concern that companies, our clients, potential clients, that these folks have a false sense of security when they are either in the cyber liability coverage they may have purchased, or cyber liability coverage that they are thinking of purchasing. And you'll recall the old days of, what was it, 5 years ago, we went to a conference in New Jersey about cyber liability, and
Right.
It was the hottest topic on the
Sure.
planet. And you remember one of my questions to someone at the time, one of the experts in the insurance world was, well, you know, on all kinds of other coverages, you have actuarial data, you have information on all kinds of things, from people who smoke pay higher premiums to people who drink and drive, lose their insurance or it goes up. Where are you getting the actuarial data to justify your coverages, your rates, and so forth? And the response I got was, well, we're still trying to figure it out. Well, here we are 5 years later, many data breaches later, and one of the things that's starting to happen is that insurance companies, carriers, are taking huge, huge losses. And I think one of the things that is also kind of disturbing is that the way that this is shaking out really is happening in the court systems. Many of the large companies that have had data breaches and believed that they were covered for certain things have now had to move into litigation to either force the carriers to cover what they thought they had, or on the flip side, they actually lose and they don't have the coverage that they thought. Here's what's happening. Now, every time insurance coverage is written, more and more exclusions are being added, more and more requirements for specific endorsements. And so it's never been more important to have good legal counsel and a really good insurance broker, agent, someone that you really trust, who really knows about this stuff, to help you make sure that you get the coverage that you need for your organizations based on your specific risks in your industry. So what kind of industries in what we work with, what kind of concerns would you have when we talk about some of these industries we work with?
Well, if we take a look at the number one industry, healthcare, and the thing that I often hear from folks when we're out with them is that I don't need to worry about incident response planning, or I don't need to worry about having a forensics expert on retainer, because I have a cyber liability risk insurance policy, and if I have a data breach, all I have to do is call up my broker or call up the agent. I'm going to report it to them, and then I'm taken care of. Mm-hmm. And you know, what we often see is that they may in fact call someone up, but then they lose control of the process itself. They lose the ability to say, I've worked with Reclamere for the last 10 years. I think that they're a trusted advisor. I'm confident that they have the skill set necessary to do this forensics investigation while this this possible data breach is occurring. And all of a sudden now that that choice gets taken away.
Yes.
The insurance companies, in many cases, have their own panels of preferred vendors. Very, very similar to if you have a car accident and you have to get your car repaired. There are shops that are approved by the insurance company.
Exactly.
Okay. But you know what? No offense. Having a fender bender and losing control and having to send it to Al's Body Shop is a lot different than having a potential 10,000 patient data breach, and you're going to have to go work with a vendor that could be 2 states away, 3 time zones away, and you have no relationship with these people whatsoever.
And 4 and 5 times more expensive.
Sure.
And you know, some of the incidents that we have investigated and understand, we use the word incident until a situation has truly been proven to be a breach. And that is a very important distinction from a regulatory perspective, from a litigation perspective. And one of the things that we have had happen is we have literally carried the water through the entire investigation up to the point to let the client know, here's the information. That information gets transmitted to their legal team makes the determination that they have in fact had a reportable breach. And once they contact their cyber liability carrier, Reclamere comes out of the picture, their own legal counsel comes out of the picture, and the insurance company does in fact take over. And to my knowledge, we've not had a situation where a client had a different determination after we were on site. So the waste of resources, to me, is really tragic. And the other issue I think that is problematic for organizations is, especially in healthcare, really understanding the difference between first and third party liability. Because in today's world with healthcare, the vendors of healthcare are known as business associates. And so it's really important that the business associate agreements be very, very specific, or the service level agreements be very, very specific when healthcare organizations are contracting with their vendors, with their business associates, that business associate doesn't just have cyber liability coverage, but that it is a specific type of coverage that includes third-party liability. Because if the vendor simply has a cyber liability policy that covers them, the vendor, XYZ transcription services, then when there is some type of an incident or some type of a breach, they're not going to have the coverage that's going to help them with breach notification to patients. It's not going to help in terms of regulatory fines and issues. So that very specific coverage and making sure that that is negotiated and everything is in alignment is super important. And one of the things we hear, unfortunately, from too many healthcare clients is, well, we have a business associate agreement, so that's all on the vendor to make sure they do that. What we're starting to hear now, more and more and more from legal professionals, is what we have been saying for about 3 years now, which is your business associate agreement is not enough. A business associate agreement is a great thing after the bad stuff has happened to talk about who's going to do what and who's going to be responsible for it. But it has absolutely almost zero value when we start talking about preventative techniques for making sure that you don't ever have to enforce your business associate agreement.
Well, I think the thing that many people forget is that at the very end, when an incident is in fact a reportable breach and it occurred because of the vendor, it is not the vendor's name that goes out in the media. So you and I were at an event last week with the PA Chamber.
Yes.
And one of the presenters talked about the Target breach. So that continues to be something that everybody really focuses on, the Target breach.
What's making so many landmark things happen in this whole arena?
And so what we don't hear about, and I quite frankly have forgotten the name, but there is an HVAC company out in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that is the culprit that caused that breach to occur for Target. But you don't hear their name out in the media.
Correct.
You don't hear their president having to come and deal with media relations. So the fact of the matter is that whether we're talking about large healthcare systems, single hospitals, etc., that particular client is ultimately responsible for choosing the vendors that they're working with. And sure, a business associate agreement is important, but there's also an additional level of due diligence that people have to do. It's no different than back in the day when hospitals contracted with the cheapest possible provider for the removal of medical waste. And when I was growing up as a kid, medical waste washing up on the Jersey Shore. It got more regulated. It became more stringent. But the reality is that the healthcare provider is responsible for that particular provider of service. In that instance, it was medical waste. In this instance, it's about patient data.
Yes.
And so I think what's going to wind up happening is there's going to have to be even more oversight. There's going to have to be more penalties. It's going to go back to the typical place, which is once you hit somebody in their wallet, once somebody feels the financial burden of not being compliant, unfortunately, I think that's when people will pay more attention to this whole issue and not just simply sit back and say, well, I have cyber liability insurance and so therefore I'm safe.
Yes.
The reality is, no, you're not. It's a layer of protection. It's a component of your overall program, but by no means is it the one stop, I have this and so therefore I'm safe.